All right. I could be doing research here forever because this is a huge topic, and the yoga guy will probably end up being here in a half an hour, so I just need to get on with it. So tomorrow I want to start my 10 super strong men of history series. You may be like, what does that have to do with like vegan fitness and whatnot? Well, this is a real strength-oriented fitness channel. That's my life. My two big obsessions physically have been strength and health. Health has been number one, and strength has been number two. So I've lifted for strength and not to have big muscles or to look good or anything, but just to be strong. And because health was the only thing more important to me than strength, I didn't allow myself to get really huge because I thought I would strain my joints and organs and stuff. So I just I got a little bit big, but not very big, and then just tried to maintain the same size and keep getting stronger. So that's why I'm focusing on strong men right now, because this specific channel is more strength oriented than probably a lot of vegan channels are. I think maybe Corey McCarthy and a couple other people might have some strength-oriented ones, but even people like John Venus and Brian Turner, who are really big, are more focused on their physique than they are on strength, although they've gotten a lot of strength in the journey. So I have a lot of respect for them. So I finally narrowed it down to, I think, 10 people I want to go over. And what I like about these is I did more research and found out that actually they started experimenting with kind of chemical enhancement a lot earlier than I thought. But most of what I've read says that like the first like steroids and stuff started getting experimented with here in the US more around the 50s, like with Bob Bukowski or whatever, when he was weightlifting. So what I like about this list is all these people are before that. But when I researched, I saw there may be some stuff earlier, but I don't know if these guys did that or not. But regardless, you can be inspired by what the human body's capable of and what the best, most genetically human beings with a lot of determination have accomplished. And maybe it will inspire you with whatever you may be struggling, be it you're a smaller framed, weaker person who's struggling to do something that may not seem impressive to some people, but to you personally it's been a big hurdle. Or maybe you're lucky and gifted and you're going for something really big like that 400-pound bench press, which a guy like me has never come close to. Whatever it is, maybe this can encourage you to have some faith in the human body and not be so scared of gravity anymore and how much that obstacle and goal weighs and how hard it seems. So this is a list of people I'd like to mention that left a mark in history, and 10 was only so many people, so they were excluded from my list, but they're still worth mentioning. So we have Joseph Curtis Hise, or JC Hise. He's the one that invented the Hise squat, where he would like get the bar off the ground and get under it and then start doing squats. He kind of is the father of the famous breathing squat routine, or the super squats, or the death sets, where you get a really heavy weight that you can probably only handle for like 10 repetitions, and you just breathe and struggle and drive and use everything in you and just dig super deep and try to bust out 20 reps before stopping. And that's craziness, but everybody in the strength world who's done this once or twice knows how effective they are. So he's definitely a person worth mentioning. He got to where he could handle 500 pretty good on squat back in a time when very few people could even squat 500. And then we had this Ghulam Muhammad who went 50 years undefeated as a wrestler and was incredibly strong. Another wrestler with a crazy name I can't even pronounce, Staislaw, Zbyszko, Like, man, I'm serious. I can't even say it. It's like a crazy name. He was a super strong, super good, insane wrestler. Then you have like some of the people from the Olympic weight lifting and strength culture and stuff, like John Davis, Bob Hoffman, who ended up creating like York Barbell and kind of being a big influence in American Olympic weightlifting back in the day. Thomas Inch, who created the real thick-handled, like 272-pound, 9-ounce dumbbell that nobody else could pick up off the ground but him. Like, obviously nowadays there's Thomas Inch dumbbell replicas, and we have all these big, huge monsters with super strong hands that do grip work all the time, who've managed to pull this feat off. And in the last Arnold Classic, the guys had gotten so strong that instead of using the Thomas Inch replica, they made some heavier ones. So they've surpassed him now. But back in the day, it was a thing where only he could do it and no one else could. So he's definitely someone worth mentioning. Then you had one of the most successful and prolific bodybuilders of all time in history, John Grimek. This is back in a time where the strength and culture, it was all intertwined. So a lot of the bodybuilders were also weightlifters and powerlifters and doing their strongman demos, and they'd be on Muscle Beach and doing all kinds of really cool things where people would pyramid on top of them and stuff. And even though there were a lot of amazing people then, he still stuck out, and he's real famous in strongman lore, and he was doing pretty good in the Olympic weightlifting at the time. Like, by today's standards, the weights wouldn't be very impressive, but at the time he was right up there at the top of the pack. So he's another great person in strongman history. And then we have Donnie Dinnie, who just dominated the Highland Games forever. And the one thing about him I'd like to talk about is the famous Dinnie Stones carry, where there were two stones. They weren't exactly the same weight, but they were pretty close. And there were some like metal rings drilled into them. And the handles weren't very thick. It was like just thin little rings. So bear in mind, like, when there's a small surface area, how much that's gonna dig into your hand. And he basically grabbed them both, picked them up. It was like the total weight of the two stones was 735 pounds, but it was uneven. And he walked 5 yards. So it's like a 735 pound farmer's walk for 15 feet. Granted, it's not that far, but 735 pounds on little rings. This isn't like big handles like our farmer walks. So they're digging into his hands, and that's just incredible. Like, if you ever have read Steve Jack's book of Stones and Strength, he went and tested all the manhood stones, and the Dinnie stones, they're still around that bridge in that bar from the story. And I think he picked up the heavier of the two stones with both his hands and was like amazed. And this is a 5'11", 285 pound guy that lifts weights like crazy and is in love with lifting stones. So it's not like he's a weak guy. So that was an impressive feat of strength, and why Donnie Dinnie's definitely someone I had on the list that I was considering before I settled on 5 guys who I thought may be even more impressive than that. And then the very last person who didn't make my list that I would like to mention is the famous Eugene Sandow. What is it, Mr. Olympia. It has like the Sandow Award because he's kind of like the father of bodybuilding. He was around before John Grimek and Steve Reeves and all these famous people. So, he was born in that same time era as a lot of the other really famous European strongmen, like the late 1800s going into the early 1900s. And the reason he didn't make the list is he was really strong, but I think everybody on this list was stronger. I think he was just really good at showmanship. Like, first of all, he cared very much about his physique, so he looked really, really good. He looked like a Greek statue, like one of the Greek gods or something. He had all his proportions good, and he was lean and cut, and he was just in great shape too. He wrote a lot about physical health and stuff, and it was going off on how we were starting to invent elevators and cars and stuff, and how all people do is push buttons and stuff, and they're not riding bikes or walking stairs or anything anymore. He was concerned with movement and motion and strength, and so there was a lot of good stuff he added. He was great in the history of the strength and history, culture movement, all that stuff. But he did do a lot of impressive things. Like, I think he got, like, with the bent press, it's an old school lift. I think he may have ended up getting 272 over his head. I can't recall, but it was something big like that. So it was a good way to do it. Like, they would, like, push away at the same time and then use their muscles to come up. So it had a lot of big muscles working together, but it's still impressive to have 272 over your head with one arm. That's craziness. And I've seen images and stuff where, like, there'd be a big platform that could come down, so the back is supported but the front's not, and then he would, like, stand under it, like in the top of a squat position, so it's like resting along his shoulders and traps, and then there'd, like, be all these people on it, and I don't know how much that would weigh and how much of the weight was dispersed onto the front where he's sitting, but it definitely looked insanely impressive to see all these people and one guy standing there like a pillar supporting it. And, like, you know, he pushed cars and bent things. So I think that he was really, really good at showmanship and marketing and stuff, but he was definitely super strong. Like, he won some contests and stuff before he ever made a name for himself and started doing this, and then he just learned how to make things look good and stuff. But that's why he's not on my list, is I think he's a little better at the showmanship and not quite as strong as the 10 people, but still super strong, someone I admire. And obviously you can tell I've talked about him this long. So these are the people that didn't make my list, but I still thought were impressive and should at least be mentioned when I was talking about strongmen of history. So tomorrow I'm going to start doing my list 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And there's no, like, 100% logical or fair way to go about it. It's not like I have my Bill and Ted's time machine and can go and collect these 10 guys and then have, like, a perfect competition where I have them go against each other in their prime. So I'm just going to base it off lifts that history kind of says that they have done and people kind of agree are attributed to them, and how impressive I think they are. And I'm just going to try my best to put them in a fair order. You are more than free to go in the comments and say, no, that guy's not first, he should be third, the guy you had in fourth should be first, and give your reasons why. It will help educate people. So please feel free to interact in the comments and tell me why you think such and such should be on the list in one spot instead of another, and maybe I'll learn something. It will be cool. So anyway, I'm going to start my list tomorrow, and I hope you enjoy learning about 10 extremely impressive people from history.